Welcome back. I'm Kimberly and this is Inside Exec. This week I'm going to talk about executive overwhelm in today's technological pace. This has come about as a result of some questions that came through after I talked about strategic planning and the changes that we need to think about in terms of that process very recently. And today I want to look at some of the overflow or the flow-on effect that happens when we are feeling overwhelmed in terms of our role, particularly as it relates to the way business is changing at the moment. I think that we get to a point where we struggle with the fact that our technical knowledge expires faster than ever before. And I know that for myself, when I've been doing projects, things that I thought I could understand, the software, the programs, the process that I thought I could understand, now oftentimes I will struggle sort of 80% through it and think, I just can't do this. I don't know where to turn next. I don't understand what's happening and I haven't got the time to learn what's happening. So I feel for all of you in that regard. While AI tools have increased our output capacity, human input capacity, our ability to think and reflect and decide hasn't changed. So we're hitting a cognitive ceiling, and that's what I have definitely experienced, because I'll have AI do certain things for me, and then I need time to think about it, to reflect on it, and to decide the next course of action. And all of that time I'm feeling this time pressure of I need to do it now, because I'm going to get left behind in the wake of what is this fast-paced, changing environment. Technology allows for real-time data, but this has created an expectation for real-time leadership. Now, I know that many of the executives that we talk to feel that they must have an immediate stance on every technological shift or every innovation that happens, and that's just not possible. So you need to obviously look at what is relevant to your industry and your organisation, and that I know comes at a cost, and it is not in keeping with the ideas that we've always talked about on this podcast about looking at other industries and seeing what they're doing and seeing the changes. But until you've got your own house in order, you can't really look at the neighbours and see if there might be something there that you could use. Analysis paralysis is well and truly alive in this age of big data. Paradoxically, having more data often makes decisions harder because it highlights more variables and potential risks. Decisions are no longer about choosing between option A and option B. They're about betting on which emerging technology will dominate your industry in the next 12 months, in the next 24 months. The overwhelming pressure of making a massive capital investment in technology that might be leapfrogged by a competitor using a newer, cheaper version next year is real and is a decision that people are making every day. I know that lots of executives feel that they must lead through this AI revolution with confidence, and yet they're feeling that they are the least informed person in the room regarding the latest tech stack. And that, once again, I can say that I feel that most definitely a lot of the time. As digital tools speed up interactions, the human connective tissue of leadership is fraying. Leaders feel isolated because their interactions have become more about updates and less about mentorship. And the sheer number of micro pivots that you have to make every day is exhausting and leading to burnout that looks like apathy. It is that analysis paralysis. It's overwhelm. It's that I don't know where to turn next. And I know that I had dealings with someone in the past week who is just in that space, who's got a whole range of good technological knowledge, really understands the technology, and has found that this latest phase of implementation of technology is calling on something that he learned 25, 30 years ago, even more probably, and bringing back that knowledge that has been dormant for that period of time and is useful and important now. But he gets to a point where all of the projects that he's working on are all in the one place, and they're stalled for all sorts of different reasons, and he just doesn't know where to turn, doesn't know who to talk to, doesn't know what to do next. And whilst we can always talk about take the little steps, choose the easiest thing, choose one thing that will move you forward, all of those things that we have talked about in the past about physical projects or projects that relied on people as the input. These days, I think that we as executives are feeling that we have to shift from being the person with the answers to the person with the best questions. What you need to do, I think, in these times is to explicitly carve out some time for 3 distinct modes of operation in terms of your work day. So you have what we call the 3 horizons discipline. So horizon 1 is operational. What is today's fire that you have to put out? Horizon 2 is the adaptive management. So what's going to happen in the next 6 months that I need to think about? And horizon 3 is the visionary horizon. So that's more about the strategic planning and looking at the longer term ideas. And that's where overwhelmed leaders usually abandon that horizon first. And it's because it's the biggest long-term risk in terms of your organisation, and you're pretty much working on today's fire, so horizon 1, and maybe a little bit of time on the adaptive horizon, so what's happening in the next 6 months. What we have to recognise is that overwhelm this year and in this time isn't about the volume of work that we have to carry out, but it's about the density of uncertainty. We know that our stress comes from fear of making a permanent decision in this temporary environment, and that's something I talked about in the strategic planning podcast. So if you haven't heard that one, you might want to go back and listen to that one. In terms of that horizon framework, there's another rule that you can think about, and that's 70-20-10. So 70% of your time should be spent on core stability, so keeping the lights on in your organisation. 20% on adaptive scaling, so responding to technological shifts, so not the other way around. And I think that there's this dilemma for so many leaders about they can't afford to spend 70% of their time on core stability because they need to be looking at what's going to happen with technology and respond to that and move towards that. And that often involves very big financial investments and changes to your workforce and the human side of the workforce. And that leads me into talking about core values, which I'm going to go on to in a minute, but let me finish this 70-20-10 rule. So we had 70% of core stability, keeping the lights on, 20% on the adaptive scaling, so responding to technological shifts, and 10% on radical experimentation. So that's where it is safe to fail, but you need to try just to make sure that it will or it won't work. So let me now talk about core values, because I think that as we start to change what is happening in our work environments, there is, and always has been in this podcast, an underlying question that we get asked continuously about communicating core values. So here we now have a time where we really have to look at those core values and make sure that if we are changing them, if we need to change them first of all, and if we are changing them, that we communicate those very clearly, because they're going to be a shift in terms of how you perceive the organisation, how others perceive the organisation, whether they're internal or external. And so we really need to look at this very, very carefully and make it some sort of value relevance crisis for your organisation. When tech-driven decisions like rapid restructuring or algorithmic management contradict stated human values, the cultural debt of your organisation grows. You're not just managing a business, you're managing the widening gap between what the company says and how it actually behaves. In the past, values were used to drive performance. Now their most important role is often to serve as an ethical guardrail for technological deployment. So what we have now is a chance to redefine the human values. what we have to go from is collaboration to co-intelligence. So it's no longer just about people working together, it's about humans and machines collaborate without you losing that human spark of creativity. In an era of black box AI, transparency now means being able to explain why an automated system made a specific decision affecting a stakeholder. We need to move beyond physical safety to protect the cognitive and mental bandwidth of a workforce that is constantly on. Now, whilst AI can provide prediction, only humans can provide judgment in terms of your organisation and its requirements, its purpose, its value. When data is uncertain or conflicting, core values act as the tiebreaker. They are the operating system that dictates how a leader or a manager chooses between two correct but competing technical paths. And I think that that's where a lot of our stress is coming from at the moment, is that as a human we can look at the data, but as a human we have a gut feeling, we have a feel one way or another for what is the correct path, even though technology might tell us that this other thing is a correct path as well. I want to leave you with a question about core values. If you fully automated your primary service tomorrow, would this value still mean anything? And if the answer is no, it wasn't a core value, it was a tactic. I'll leave you with that question to ponder on. I'm Kim Bailey and this is Inside Exec.